Good morning, everybody, and it is a very early morning, I might add. Today we are going to right now talk about a new study that was just published in the British Medical Journal. Title of this article is Regular Use of Fish Oil Supplements and Course of Cardiovascular Disease, a Prospective Cohort Study. This was just published relatively recently, I suppose. No, I'm sorry, it was just published. It was accepted on April 3rd of 2024. Trying to see the exact publication date. So if it was accepted in April of 2024, then it was published in May of 2024, but I don't see the exact date. Let me look on the next page. No, they don't provide a date. So, May of 2024. Again, the title of this article from the British Medical Journal is Regular Use of Fish Oil Supplements and Course of Cardiovascular Disease. So, I haven't read this at all, other than just very briefly looking at a few high points. So, the point of my doing this review is to obviously talk about this article, and I'm going to critique it. I'm not going to read the article word for word, and I'll explain to you why. Most of the time I do read articles word for word, and usually I read them twice before I put them in my books. And as you would expect, and as you will see right now, that's a time-consuming process. So, no, I'm sorry, here's the exact publication date. The exact publication date is May 21st. I see it now. They put it on the side of the page, which is why I didn't see it at first. A lot of people, want to be experts, but they don't want to take the time to read, let alone read closely, let alone read closely twice, let alone cross-reference. So that's just the reality of expertise as it exists in the world. Some people are, Facebook experts, and some people read for detail. And I am going to read this for detail. The parts that I'm going to read, I'll read for detail. I don't personally feel the need to scrub this article. Like if I were a tenured cardiology professor at some big medical school, and all I did was focus on cardiovascular disease and its, associated treatments and controversies, then yeah, I would read this word for word and scrub it. I don't really care about this topic. I do care about the intervention, which is fish oil, so that's why I'm going to talk about it. But I don't consider this to be a hugely important article. Now, some people will consider this to be a hugely important article. It'll probably get picked up by like the New York Times and some of the news outlets in the United States. But I'm going to show you what they should tell you and what they're not going to tell you about this article. Like I said, I didn't read this. It was just sent to me last night by a text message. Excuse me. And I just looked at a few high points. But again, I'm not trying to cheapen my review of this. I'm trying to make my review of this article appropriate to its level of importance, which for me is low, and for its level of quality, which again is low. If this were a highly important, high-quality article, I would spend more time with it. But again, I'm showing you this kind of as an exercise so that you can see, number one, how to quickly assess research, and number two, how to not waste time on research that's not worth wasting a bunch of time on. Now, as I'm using this kind of as a tutorial, I might babble about this article for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour. I hope not, because we actually have an appointment within the hour, so I will try to keep this at less than an hour. But again, what I'm trying to show you is how to quickly evaluate research and not waste your time on something that doesn't need a lot of time. Now, doing this in a tutorial format, I'm going to have to use more time. I've already made my decision on this article. But I'm going to show you how to save your time by doing a quick assessment and then moving on. So, you know, in a given day, I mean, I could look at 100 articles in a day. Some of those articles are worth a deep dive and a deep scrub. Other articles aren't, and this is, again, an example of an article that's not worth it. So let's get into this, and I'll show you how and why to do a quick evaluation on an article like this. Because, as Richard Schott said in his review of Nietzsche, by the way, that's Nietzsche on the wall right here. As Richard Schott wisely said many years ago, in intellectual terms, quality depends on quantity, but those aren't exactly identical. So, you know, you'll notice in Alan Gaby's work, in Jeffrey Bland's work, in my work, you know, we look at thousands, we and other researchers like us, you know, we look at thousands of articles in a given year. And that does give us a different perspective from, you know, a family medicine doctor who's only reading, you know, American Journal of Family Medicine or American Family Physician, or, you know, just looking at New England Journal of Medicine. I mean, just saying that, just the idea of being an American doctor, board certified in internal medicine or family medicine, and only reading JAMA or New England Journal of Medicine, I mean, that actually makes me feel kind of nauseous, just the idea of that. But tens of thousands of doctors live and practice that way. They get their little board certification. I mean, well, I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of respect for board certification. I don't. That's why I never pursued it. I mean, I was planning to pursue it. I was in the route to pursue it, but I think it's garbage for the most part. It would be garbage for me. Let me say it would be garbage for me. For somebody who wants to practice family medicine in a rural setting, let's say, where they are the primary care doc in the region, or in the town, or in their county, or whatever, family medicine training is probably appropriate for them. Now, family medicine training includes a lot of bullshit and a lot of drug propaganda and a lot of mindless, you know, robotic behavior, but it includes a lot of things that are important that I don't want to do, you know, like inserting subclavicular lines and things like that, and delivering babies. Man, I hope I never deliver another baby in my life. So for some doctors, it's probably appropriate training. For me, it was just torture. So anyway, back to this. I'm trying to give you tons of perspectives all at once. And so I have to ramble a little bit. So I'll ramble a little bit more. I do happen to have one of my favorite Barcelona sweat tops on. And related to that, I just got my renewed American passport yesterday, which I'm very happy about, because probably within the next week I'll be hitting the road, or hitting the tarmac, or flying off the tarmac, I should say. So I am glad that I just got my American passport renewed, because I'll be going somewhere pretty soon. Don't exactly know where. All right, one more sip of coffee, and now you've endured the introduction, and here we go. All right, so we're starting right now at 10 minutes worth of my introduction. We're going to go into this, and I'm going to show you why this is garbage. Okay, so I'll read word for word the abstract. We'll go into some details. But, yeah, so one of the things I wanted to say, which I'll say right now, is Yeah, in order to be a good researcher, you have to look at a lot of research. But that also includes the fact that you can't waste time on bad research. And so what I'm showing you in this example is that you need to be able to quickly assess an article to see if it's worth the time. Now, you know, I might take an overview, a quick overview of an article, and I do want to say one other thing in just a moment, assuming I remember it. I might take a quick overview of an article, not really like it, but I might look at, for example, their discussion and their materials and methods, and that might have payoff even if other parts of the article don't have payoff. So on this particular topic, I don't anticipate that they are going to include details that are of interest to me. In another article that I may or may not like too much, I might see certain parts of that article that are of interest. I don't think that applies to this article. The other thing I wanted to say, and what I just mentioned just a second ago, is that, again, well, I would consider this to be a higher level evaluation perspective commentary. In the desire to be experts, and in the desire to be knowledgeable, and in the desire to be efficient, we also don't, me, if I'm going to be good at what I do, and if you're going to be good at what you do, you know, you don't want to just look at something, make a quick judgment, and then, in a sense, I'm just going to say this my way, but you don't want to be an ass about it. So, like, I don't want to look at this article, say it's bullshit, look at who funded it and say it's even more bullshit, and then convince myself that I'm right in my judgment that this is bullshit. So, you know, I may have that judgment, and I may conclude with that judgment, but at some point in that process, if I'm going to be, you know, intellectually rigorous and honest, I also have to check myself and say, okay, are you being too fast with this? Maybe this is good. Maybe you should give them another chance. So, you know, those are reasonable things. Those are reasonable considerations. So, let's see. So again, right now we're at 13 minutes. I'm going to just mark the page with a X and another X. And the only reason I did that, and I'm going to erase that right now, is so I can synchronize the two cameras together when I'm editing this. Okay, so here we go. Oops, sorry. Objective, to examine the effects of fish oil supplements. Okay, so, sorry, let me say one more thing before we get started on this. If you are a doctor, family medicine, cardiology, whatever, internal medicine, chiropractic, naturopathic medicine, whatever. If you are a doctor and you think you're expert, or you are an expert or whatever, what I invite you to do before you look at my review of this is I want you to download this article. I'll put it on the website below the video. So you can download this article for free, and you do your own evaluation of it. You know, and then you can watch this video review and see how your conclusions match with mine or don't, and then you can leave a comment if you want, and kind of see where you are with respect to the evaluation that I'm about to hurl onto this. So let's just get going. So right now, my watch, this watch, says it's 6:39 a.m., so we're taking off right now. I did make a few notes to myself last night just as I was going to sleep, so I'll look at my phone and look at my own messages in just a moment and see what I said. But otherwise, we're going to run through this. 6:39, let's go. To examine the effects of fish oil supplements on the clinical course of cardiovascular disease, from a healthy state to atrial fibrillation, major cardiovascular events, and subsequently death. So you'll notice that in this article, they've already designed kind of a schema, so to speak, or a progression. I've never seen that progression before But they are describing it in 4 steps. Healthy, to atrial fibrillation, to major events, and then death. I've never seen it described like that. Maybe that's the current science. But okay, it got published in the British Medical Journal, so apparently 3 people agreed with it. Prospective cohort study. So is this a double-blind, placebo-controlled prospective study? No. These are just 2 groups floating in space, going through time together, but they're not randomized. They're not, there's no placebo was used, and maybe that's better because these British Medical Journal and the big journals like JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine, Annals of Internal Medicine, Archives of Internal Medicine, Lancet, I mean, they usually use pathetic placebos because they want to make nutritional supplements look worthless, and they want to make their drug advertisers very happy. So the fact that this isn't placebo-controlled in one of these top 5 journals, that could be a good thing. Prospective cohort study. From 2006 to 2021, so median follow-up of 11 years. So did they have enough time to evaluate the disease being investigated here? Yeah. For cardiovascular disease, 10 years is okay. They had 400,000 participants. Is that reasonable? Yeah, it's a lot of people. So you got a lot of people over a lot of time. Is this representative of the population? That's a lot of humans. That's a lot of humans for a lot of time. So this is going to give us, some level of reasonable data, except that it's not randomized and it's not placebo controlled, and they don't have a good placebo because they have no placebo. Incident cases of atrial fibrillation, major adverse cardiovascular events, and death is what they're looking for. Identified by linkage to hospital inpatient records. So this is in the UK where they have semi-socialized medicine, so to speak, meaning that it's just publicly funded. So if you're vigorously anti-socialist and anti-Marxist, and you think that everything that's socially funded is communist, then you shouldn't read this article, because you shouldn't benefit from something that you're against. So if you are willing to accept a public database of a public health care system, then we can continue. They're looking at the role of fish oil supplements in different progressive stages of cardiovascular diseases, again, from healthy to atrial fibrillation to major events to death. So those are their 4-step, that's the 4-step program here. So among 450,000 participants free of cardiovascular disease, 18,000 with AFib, 22,000 with major events, 22,000 deaths. Wow, that's a high, supremely high. Those are supremely high percentages. So they've got 400,000 people total, and then in stage 1, they've got almost 20,000, and of those, about 20,000 had events, and 22,000 died. So that was a very slippery slope. That's impressive. I wouldn't have expected that. I would have expected, they've got their big group. You would expect a small percentage to have AFib, and then an even smaller group to go to cardiovascular events. Smaller group goes to death. But look at their percentages. I mean, their percentages, and once you're in group 2, which is their AFib group, you just slippery sloped your way to death in their group. That's That's amazing. Actually, if their model is correct, and apparently their model is not correct, if their model were correct, that you go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, you wouldn't expect more 3s and 4s than 2s. You would expect more 2s than 3s and 4s. But they actually had more 3s than 2s, according to this. I mean, that's what their numbers are saying. They had 18,000 in group 1, in group 2, which is their AFib group. So their model is not correct. And I didn't think their model was correct. That's what I said at the beginning. I said that I've never seen it presented this way. And so their model is incorrect. Their model doesn't make sense. Oops. If their model were correct, you would expect more in group 3 and 4 than in group 2, but they had more in group 4 than they did in group 2. So their model is incorrect. And that's why I said I've never seen this before. So anyway, moving on. Regular use of fish oil supplements had different roles in the transitions from healthy status to AFib, to major events, and then to death. For people without cardiovascular disease, hazard ratios were, for people without cardiovascular disease, hazard ratios were 1.13 for transitioning from healthy status to AFib. Well, so that was a 13% increase. That's pretty small. And 1.05 from healthy status to stroke, which is a 5% increase. Is statistically, I mean, we're getting pretty negligible there. For patients with a diagnosis of a known cardiovascular disease, regular use of fish oil was beneficial for transitions from AFib to major events. Hazard ratio 0.92, so they had an 8% reduction in risk, is what that indicates. So so here we're at plus 13%. Here we're at plus 5%. And here we are at minus 8%. And myocardial infarction. Oh, so here we're at minus 15% risk. And heart failure to death, and here we're at minus 9%. Well, I mean, let's just look at those percentages. So you have a slight. So let's just do simple math, and this is just a quick look. So they're saying the increased risk was 13 and then a 5. So let's just add that together. I'm just doing this for kicks, but let's just see if this works. That would be an 18% worsening. Make sure that I'm doing this fairly. Or you can have a 23-32. I'm just adding up these percentages just to see if it works at all. So on the one hand, they're showing a combined 18% risk. But on the other hand, they're showing a negative 32% risk. So if you look at the totality of it, it would still be beneficial by that quick analysis, which may or may not be valid. Conclusions: regular use of fish oil supplements might be a risk factor for atrial fibrillation and stroke among general population, but could be beneficial for progression of cardiovascular disease from atrial fibrillation to major adverse events. So regular use of fish oil supplements might be a risk factor for AFib and stroke. They should have defined what type of stroke they're talking about. Among the general population, but hemorrhagic or ischemic is what I mean. So that was They should have done better work there, but anyway, it's just plus or minus one word actually makes a big difference. But could be beneficial for progression and atrial fibrillation to death. Further studies are needed to determine the precise mechanisms for the development and prognosis of cardiovascular disease events with regular use of fish oil supplements. Okay, well, we're going to scratch out regular use of fish oil supplements, and I'll show you why. So basically, they have no conclusion. So, you know, if let's assume I'm a busy researcher and I've got, 100 articles to look at in a day. Am I going to spend a lot of time on this article? No. Their conclusions already are insignificant. They found a little benefit. They found some benefit. They found some risk. What do you want me to do with that? So this is a neutral. This paper is within the zone of neutrality. It has no impact. No one's going to read this and say, man, I got to take specific action on this. No specific action can be drawn from what they've said so far. They showed an 18% increase in risk. They also showed a 32% reduction in other risks. So what am I going to do with that? The hazard ratios are very small, 1.1, 1.0. I don't care about 1.0. 1.0 is neutral. So, if at any level, this is not worth spending a lot of time with. If you are a public policy maker, you can't read this article, at least at this level, where we've gotten so far. You can't look at this and say, man, we need a major policy change, or we need to continue doing whatever. This article provides no actionable data. I mean, that's all right. That's the conclusion of this article. They should say that here. They should say, we found nothing. That should be the final conclusion of their abstract. We found nothing that we can't do anything with this data. But it gets worse. But it gets much worse. How this look at their little excerpt box for the busy docs who don't read research. At least I could read it. I just don't want to. What is already known on this topic? It's controversial. No, not really. When they allow the publication of a bunch of bullshit research, anything can be controversial. Breathing oxygen will be controversial at some point. If somebody wants to sell, oxygen and condemn natural oxygen, that'll be the next thing, I guess, that happens. Most previous studies focused on one health outcome and did not characterize specific events like they broke it down here, which is unusual, and it didn't work, by the way. So the way that they're saying other studies didn't break it down into details, but then in this study they did break it down into details, but their system of breaking down those details didn't work. I mean, it's physiologically impossible. So their model's incorrect, but at least they had whatever. It's another thing about this article that doesn't make sense. Oh. In people with no known cardiovascular disease, regular use of fish oil supplements was associated with increased risk of AFib and stroke. In people with known cardiovascular disease, the beneficial effects of fish oil supplements were seen on transitions in these various conditions. But apparently the overall effect was beneficial. That's my impression of this. How this study might affect research, practice, or policy, they better say nothing. Regular use of fish oil supplements might have different roles in the progression of cardiovascular disease. That's not a sentence that communicates anything. Regular use of fish oil supplements might have different roles in the progression of cardiovascular disease. Thanks for nothing. Further studies are needed to determine the precise mechanisms for whatever. So they got nothing. Okay, so I'm already thinking that this study, what I just talked through in 30 minutes, I scanned through last night on my phone, looking at this, thinking this is worthless. And everybody thinks, I've had one letter published in the British Medical Journal, And then they published some of my stuff on their website, which apparently was too hot to actually publish in print. But, you know, a couple of years ago, the BMJ was good. Now it's just, I think it's kind of a tabloid. Okay, so let's criticize this more. So their own conclusions are meaningless. They have no actionable data. Their confidence intervals are worthless. Their hazard ratios are meaningless. Their model was inaccurate. But it gets worse. They didn't test anything in this article. They don't even know if these people were taking fish oil. So the way that they evaluated the use of fish oil in the study was a self-report of people saying, yeah, I'm taking fish oil. We don't know how much, we don't know the quality, we don't even know if it was fish oil. So let me just show you where they say that here. A baseline survey, touch screen questionnaire, face-to-face interviews. We excluded patients. So those are the methods. Where are there? Determining use of fish oil supplements. Information on regular use of fish oil supplements was collected from a self-reported touchscreen questionnaire during the baseline survey. So at no point in time did a nutrition knowledgeable healthcare professional look at the products, look at the bottles, look at the amounts, and say, yes, Mr. or Mrs. Jones, you are taking fish oil, a good product from a good company, and it's a well-designed product at the appropriate dose. That never happened. So they've got no data. We have zero data on amounts, quantity. Should be at least 2 grams of EPA and DHA. So are these people even taking fish oil? We don't know. Are they taking a fish oil product that even has EPA and DHA? We don't know the answer to that. Are they taking the appropriate dose? We don't know. Was it a semi-synthetic version or was it the natural form? We don't know. Was it absorbed well? We don't know. Was it contaminated? Was it oxidized? And was it absorbed physiologically? So the other thing that they could have done in this study, which they didn't do, we also don't know about compliance. What they could have looked at here is what's called the omega-3 index, which is the ratio of omega-3 fatty acids found in fish oil, mostly EPA and DHA, versus the omega-6 fatty acids, and look at that ratio, because that ratio would tell you, that would answer a lot of questions about, were they compliant, were they taking fish oil, was it a good product, was it getting absorbed, was it having a biological effect. If they had actually measured the blood levels of the ratio between omega-3 and omega-6, then they would know if these people were actually taking fish oil. Right now we don't know. They could have been taking olive oil and maybe they thought it was fish oil. They could have been taking flax oil and it said omega-3, so they thought it was fish oil. They could have been taking GLA thinking it's the same thing as fish oil. So any of those errors could have occurred, and that would make this data completely worthless. So they've got no data on what was taken, and they've got no N3 index. So this is completely worthless, and this was published in the British Medical Journal, one of the top 5 journals in the world. And a lot of doctors, a lot of medical doctors who don't know anything about nutrition, they'll look at this and say, oh man, there's no evidence to support fish oil. No, this is just garbage research. For those of you who don't know about what I just said, I was talking about EPA, which is eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA, which is docosahexaenoic acid. Those are the major, but not the only, fatty acids of interest in fish oil. Specifically, those are long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. So, like I said, somebody sent me this on text message last night. I just looked at it on my phone, and I was like, this is worthless. And now you can see how worthless it is. What else? What else makes this worthless? So they have no data. They have no data here. They don't know if people were taking fish oil. They don't know the quality. They don't know if it was absorbed. They don't know if it actually got into the biological membranes to be tested in the omega-3 or the omega-3 index. They've got no data. They've got no data. Their model was incorrect. And, according to my whatever math I just did looking at this, when I did this, I can kind of hallucinate and say it looks like a net benefit based on my hallucinatory math. It looks like a net benefit. So anyway, let's see. Let me see what my own notes were to myself last night when I looked at this. Because I do have maybe one or two more comments. So this is observational. It's not an intervention study. The people were self-selected. So the other thing that invalidates the conclusions of the study is that it was totally observational. They didn't do randomization. The people were self-selected. People who self-select are different from people who don't do anything. These could have been people with more money, less money, more access, different information. They could have been hypochondriacs who were taking every supplement they could find, even if it's low quality. We don't know what was available to them. So we have a lot of variables here that they couldn't control, and therefore they have no conclusions. Self-reported, which is notoriously unreliable. We have no idea if they were taking GLA or ALA or EPA or DHA. As I said, most medical doctors wouldn't know the difference anyway. No analysis of the products, no analysis of blood levels to test for compliance. And now I'm going to introduce to you something respectfully attributed to Alan Gaby, who was my nutrition teacher 28 years ago at Bastyr University. That was back in the day when students actually showed up to school and paid attention. I actually sat in the front row, as you would expect. So what I call, respectfully, the law of Alan Gaby, which I learned from Alan Gaby actually before I was a student of his, because I learned this from one of his audio cassettes in 1994. Alan said in one of his presentations, he said, anytime you see research that you don't like, look to see who funded it. So, if we go down to toward the end of this article, so let's assume that I don't like this. Well, who funded it? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Well, what is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation notorious for funding? Drug research, but a specific group of drugs that are injected and which are notoriously dangerous and notoriously ineffective. And now, notoriously used for political purposes and social control. So that's suspicious funding, let's say. What else? What else? Competing interests. Anyway, maybe they have other documents online that aren't included here, but yeah, this article's a big failure, and that's why I looked at it really quickly last night, and I thought, the authors. So let's see, what should I do? I'll go with a green pen and then we'll wrap it up. Or a purple pen or whatever. Oh, let's go green, even though it's pretty dark green. So let's just go very quickly. I'll make my final points here. And I said this spontaneously right from the start. It's like, this is an unusual disease model. I've never seen this before. Their disease model doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense even with their own numbers. If it were a progression from health, you would expect more people healthy, a big group with atrial fibrillation, according to their model, a smaller group with events, and then, of course, an even much smaller group with death. But their death and events group are impressively parallel in size, and impressively parallel with their stage 2 atrial fibrillation. So, like I said, their model is not correct. So, where can I make some notes? I will make them, I guess I'll make them right here. Just a quick summary. Inaccurate model. Innovative, but inaccurate. So it doesn't matter if it's innovative if it doesn't work. Inaccurate model. And the unfortunate thing about that is some young doctor or researcher could potentially pick up this article and assume that this is an established progressive model, and it's not accurate. So their model's inaccurate. They used survey data, which is notoriously inaccurate. 24-hour recall for diet is horrible, and it's notoriously worthless. We have no idea what these people were taking. We've got no product data. We've got no compliance data. Usually compliance has to be at least 80% for an intervention to be considered valid. We have no idea what these people were doing. They could have been taking fish oil once a month. So again, that's why, I can look at an article like this, and in less than 3 minutes I can tell you it's worthless. It's taken me 42 minutes to go through this review so far, but that's because I'm trying to explain the details and ramble a little. What else? We have no idea about the quality of the product. We have no idea about compliance. They don't have an M3 index measured on anybody. For this many patients, 400,000 people, they could have studied the index, and if they had done it in 1%, that would have been 4,000 people. Or 10% would have been 40,000 people. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's why they didn't want to do it. They also probably didn't really care. I mean, look at who's funding the research. Look at who's funding the research. They were funded by a group notoriously anti-nutrition, anti-autonomy, anti-health. So that's what they got. What else? Inaccurate model with unusual results within that model. It's just weird. The survey is notoriously inaccurate. We don't know about the products or compliance. We have no evidence of any biological causality here. And questionable funding. So I'll just put question mark funding. And if you don't think that that's important, then you don't understand how the world works. So these people were selected and paid by an anti-nutrition organization to then create anti-nutrition research. And looky what they did. They found more controversy. So controversy in medicine means you don't do anything. It means sit on your hands and wait for somebody to tell you what to think. And that's what they wanted here. They wanted to create, the greatest controversy or negativity possible, and so that's what they achieved. So for this article, those are reasonable take-home messages, which means it's not even worth looking at. Their model is inaccurate. It's innovative and turned out to be inaccurate. It's the biological plausibility of their own model is almost zero. I mean, it just doesn't work. That doesn't work. The survey is notoriously inaccurate. They didn't test any products. They didn't look at compliance. They didn't do even a baseline representative sample of omega-3 index. And look at who funded it. So, like I said, at an expert level, you've got to look at data. You've got to look for you have to look for reliable data. It doesn't mean that you would want to cherry pick your data and only look for articles that you like, but you have to look for quality data. None of this is quality data on any level. I mean, it's just totally worthless. Plus, and I should make one more note. If you look at their own data, their impact factors or their hazard ratios, HR, or relative risk, was in the range of 1.05 to 1.13, and then sometimes the hazard ratio was actually negative. It was actually negative, which means benefit in this case. Negative hazard ratio means less hazard. So if you're below 1, then you're actually better off. So the worst case scenario is that they showed minimal risk, but they actually showed more benefit than risk. So, overall, when I looked at it, it looked like it was actually trending towards benefit. So a negative hazard ratio is actually a good thing. So, again, we have some suggestion of benefit here, but overall we have no good data. I mean, let's say that I want to sell fish oil, which I don't. But even if I wanted to be biased in favor of fish oil and look at this article, I wouldn't publish a press release saying, new research shows the benefit of fish oil based on this, even though I think maybe we could see some evidence of benefit here. So anyway, that's my quick review of this article. I assume this article will probably get picked up in some media outlets, and they'll call it controversy. It's not controversy. This is just unreliable data. Controversy in medicine and science should only occur when you have good data conflicting with other good data. This isn't good data. This is worthless data. So it doesn't even deserve to be considered within the conversation of evaluating risk and benefit with fish oil. So that's my 48-minute, about 48 minutes. That's my 48 minutes worth of conversation on this article. I think the article is worth looking at and getting over it pretty quick and moving on to a better article. So like if I, let's assume I'm in work mode and I'm trying to go through a couple hundred articles in a day or a couple hundred articles in a week, and I'm looking for data that's useful. It doesn't mean I'm looking for data that makes me happy or that's, serves my model necessarily. But I have to look for data that's useful. And this isn't useful data, either pro or con. So, yeah, this is just worthless. Anyway, does the British Medical Journal publish worthless research? Yeah, this is worthless research. Are they willing to do that if it creates controversy around the use of nutritional supplements? Yeah. Should this article have been rejected? It could have easily been rejected by a good journal. But again, like I said, with outcomes-based research, we either show benefit, harm, or neutrality, aka controversy, aka don't do anything. The big medical journals want negative data or they want neutral data because they want decision paralysis. They either want negative data or decision paralysis. So in this article, this feeds into the pharmaceutical model and drug company hegemony by creating neutrality. The take-home message from this article is confusion. no benefit, and sit on your hands and do nothing. Well, if you're a family medicine or internal medicine doctor, you can't sit on your hands and do nothing. So what this article says is that you shouldn't do nutrition. Okay, well, what else do you have? You've got drugs and procedures. So by publishing neutral or negative or controversial or worthless data on nutrition, that still supports the drug and procedure paradigm, because they have to do something. And what this article supports is confusion or inaction with regard to use of nutrition. So what else do you have? You've got the other two P's, which are prescriptions and procedures. So that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Today is what? Today's Thursday. So maybe next couple of videos, hopefully I'll be in some desirable, semi-desirable location now that I have my passport renewed. Or maybe not. I have some desire to do a little bit of travel, but not a ton of desire to do that travel. But I might still travel. So, hope you're all doing well. I'll get this on the website as soon as I can merge these videos together. And take care, and I'll see you out there somewhere. Bye.